Hi, my name is Marjorie, and I'm a documentary-style newborn and family photographer. Parenthood is such a wonderful adventure, but it can feel lonely sometimes. So many experiences we go through are never really talked about. I wanted to create a space where parents can openly discuss their challenges, their successes, and their journeys. This is the resource I wish I had when I first became a mom. This is I Wish I Knew, a series on parenthood.
Hi, my name's Marina. I am a married mom. My husband's name is Daniel, and we have two children, a 3-year-old daughter named Violet and a 6-week-old baby named Leon. I wanted to, have a different experience and embrace birth as a rite of passage, and also honestly, a political decision to divest from the hospital system, which I think in the US is deeply problematic, and there seems to be something systemic within our healthcare system. We have a really high maternal and infant mortality rate, and it's gotten a lot of political attention. At the time when I learned about it, it was kind of not really something that people talked about. Midwives specialize in low-risk pregnancies, low-risk births. You're still delivering with someone who is an expert in birth and managing any emergencies that come up. They can do almost anything that they do in a hospital outside of what they don't practice. But really the main difference is that you can't get an epidural at a birth center with a midwife. That you need an anesthesiologist for that. We were here at this apartment, and it just we didn't really know what to expect, how long it was going to be. My first cramp was like at 9 o'clock at night, and Violet was born at 9:19 in the morning. So it was like basically 12 hours start to finish from like that first indication of early labor. Our doula came over at around 5 o'clock in the morning. She got here. I remember one particularly intense contraction after it peaked. I felt a drop in my pelvis, and I yelled, like, I just felt something drop. And the doula was like, it's time to go. We got to the birth center about 7:15, and they checked me, and I got in the tub, and they just basically said, time, push whenever you're ready. So it was about an hour and a half of pushing, and Daniel was in the tub with me.
And an arm and body. Alright. Marina, you gonna turn? You got it, Daniel? Pull it up. Perfect. Alright.
It's a girl, sweetheart. Oh my God. It's a girl. It's a girl. It's a girl, honey. It's a girl, sweetie. I love it.
And with the midwife's assistance, he caught her, and so he was the first person to touch her and put her on my chest.
We have a little girl. Oh, baby. It's okay, baby.
Good job, Dad.
Oh, baby.
And we just kind of had a really nice first moments together in the birth tub there. My first thought after she came out was like, I did it. And I had that feeling of just accomplishment, and everything they said was true, like trust in your body, like I knew I could do this. My second thought was, she feels like mine. Like she feels like the flesh of my flesh, like this is my baby, and it felt very natural and just one of those like perfect moments. My midwife told me that she noticed that she was seeing like quite a bit of bleeding, and she was encouraging me to try to birth the placenta, and she was kind of doing some coached pushing. It was clear that it wasn't working, and she said that this is called retained placenta, and we need to try to get the placenta out, and she basically offered me the choice to try to do it there without anesthesia, or I could transfer to a hospital. I mean, I didn't want to go. I was like, hopefully it'll just like come out. And then the midwife, basically had me get ready, and she said, I'm going to try to scoop it out. I knew that it was going to hurt, but when she actually went in and did it, it was the kind of pain that I've like never experienced before. It was like suffering level pain, and I think, after, seconds, I was like, stop, I can't do this. She said, it's starting to tear, so I'm not going to try, like we should go. And so it was basically like a 911 call. The paramedics came in an ambulance, the fire truck. We had already cut the cord, so the baby wasn't gonna come with me. Daniel and my midwife were going to meet me at whatever hospital they took me to. The plan was that it was hopefully going to just be a quick procedure to have it removed under anesthesia, and then I would be discharged. I was on a gurney with the paramedics who had treated me, and it was just really chaotic. They triaged me, and they said that they were going to give me conscious sedation to have it removed, and that Daniel could be there in the procedure room with me. They were giving me what I thought was oxygen, and then the next thing I knew, I was like waking up. And as it turned out, they didn't give me conscious sedation. They put me under general anesthesia. They just didn't tell me. And then Daniel was just like waiting in a hallway somewhere in like scrubs to go in with me, and they just never got him or never told him either. It's just like one of these things, somebody made a decision in the hospital and they just didn't tell you. The placenta had come out in basically one piece. And then the OB came in and he said that I did lose some blood and that he wanted to keep me overnight for monitoring and to have a blood transfusion. And at that point, we were like, the baby, can we be like reunited? And they said, yes, once you transfer out of the recovery room. When I first came in, the nurses kept asking me, where's the baby? And I was like, the baby's at the birth center. And then the OB asked me the same thing, and then he was like, what's a birth center? And I was like, oh my God, like what is happening? And so my husband went down to the entrance of the hospital to meet his parents with our baby while I was in the recovery room, and then the plan was to meet me in whatever my hospital room was gonna be. While he was gone, the nurse came up to me and somewhat apologetically said, actually, the baby can't stay here overnight with you. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, well, for liability reasons, because the baby wasn't born in this hospital, they can't admit the baby. And I was just like, what are you talking about? Like, she was just born, I need to be with my baby. And one of the other nurses said, no, it's better actually, because she could like get an infection if you bring her in the hospital, or like someone could kidnap her. That was one of the things that the nurses actually said to me that was supposed to reassure me that it was better if like my hours-old infant was like separated from me overnight. It was like terrifying, and we felt like so, I don't know, just kind of like violated, and just like there was no medical reason to tell us that we needed to be separated. I had the blood transfusion overnight, and then in the morning I was discharged, and just kind of like came home feeling like I just want to somehow recapture the sacredness of having just given birth, and just like forget about what had just happened with the placenta. And that's kind of like what I spent like 2 weeks kind of doing, just kind of like pushing any thoughts of what happened at the hospital out of my mind and just being like, no, like just forget about that. Let's focus on like the good parts of the birth. We had a postpartum doula working with us. At that time, she came over a few nights a week and was helping me with breastfeeding and feeding the baby and, you know, all the kind of baby nurse stuff. And she was like, I know some therapists who specialize in like birth trauma. And at that point, like I was like, I didn't even want to acknowledge that it had been a traumatic experience. I just wanted to be like, no, like everything's fine now. Like I had my out of hospital birth. As the weeks went by, I was like, I think I do need to talk to someone. And so I went to a therapist who specializes in birth trauma. I actually still work with her 3 years later. And she essentially said, like, you have PTSD from this thing that happened. And I spent about a year in therapy really processing the postpartum period and processing what had happened in the second part two of the birth. I wanted to have like this perfect bond with my baby. I was carrying around all of this like anxiety that like something was going to be like tainted, something was wrong, that I needed to like try extra hard to bond with Violet because we were separated. It was like kind of necessary to process it in like a longer time period, and then to be able to like look back and say like, no, that is not the case. Yes, I had this scary and very painful experience, and we were not treated well, and this is unfortunately how the healthcare system in the U.S. works, that, you know, they prioritize liability over, you know, compassion. But that's separate from what my worst fear was, that it was going to somehow negatively impact my relationship with my daughter. And I can say that, you know, that's just not the case. And so being able to kind of like identify like what is my worst fear about what happened, and then to say like my worst fear isn't true, was very empowering. For my second child, I was like, I want to have a home birth, even though it was only a 10-minute drive. That 10-minute drive when I was like in fully like transition labor felt like a long time. And we wanted to make sure that we had a really, really good contingency plan. So in addition to having 2 midwives attend the home birth, we also had a backup OB who would be available on call when I went into labor in case I needed to be admitted. In the midwifery model of care, they do kind of the wait and see approach, where they let the placenta be delivered naturally and physiologically, whereas in a hospital you usually get medication to help the placenta be born. And so my midwives said that in my case, because I did have retained placenta for the first birth, it would be indicated to have active management. So the plan was that I was going to get Pitocin basically as soon as the baby was born. We had this great plan, and 4 days before my due date, I woke up in the middle of the night with some early contractions, and I had been in touch with my midwives, and I was like, they're getting a little stronger, but it's still irregular. I think we still have time. And then essentially in the 10 minutes that it took Daniel to walk Violet down to his dad's car and come back up, like my contractions it felt like it went from like 0 to 100. I mean, I couldn't move. I was like in it, like really intense, and it was a little scary. And I mean, I had done this before, so I had an indication of what to expect, but I was having those like thoughts of like, oh my God, this is so intense. I can't do this. What if this is like for the next 5 hours? Like, oh my God, this is scary. I kind of reached up and I felt the baby's head like right there. I felt the bag of waters and the baby's head was like right there. All I could do was just yell to Daniel from the bathroom, like, it's coming. And he came in and kind of was like casually like walking around, and I was pushing the head out. And he finally came into the bathroom and looked at me because I was on all fours, and he was like, the head's out. And I couldn't talk because I was just like in the middle of it. But in my head, I was like, yeah, I know the head is out. Like, I just pushed it out. And he kind of just like got behind me, and the next contraction started. It was completely involuntary. The baby just came out. And 90 seconds later, the midwives walked in. I was just like on the bathroom floor holding him, and she came in, and I was like so relieved. It was like seeing an angel, and she was like, you're safe, your baby's safe, like everything's fine. They gave me 2 shots of Pitocin in the thigh, and 20 minutes later, the placenta came out perfect. And, you know, we just had that like golden hour of, you know, nursing in bed, and we had like one of those labors, like if we had delivered in a hospital, for sure the baby would have been born in the car or on the side of the road. Honestly, I think some of my happiest moments have been when you've got like an unhappy little baby, an unhappy child, and you're kind of doing that detective work, that sleuthing to kind of try to solve the mystery of why they're unhappy. I think those have been my happiest moments, when I figured it out, what they needed. Just having that surge of confidence, like, I'm actually good at this. Like, I'm actually good at being a mom and being a parent and taking care of my child.
That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll tune in next time for more stories from parents just like you.